Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now. Hi, I'm back. This is part two. I would really recommend for you to go and listen to part one with Dr. Phil. It's very powerful in understanding some of the dynamics that are happening with our children in their schools, and with also how we are working with children or need to work with children in a better way. But for this segment, what we're going to be focused on is the educator's evolution. Tech transformed teaching. Yes, tech transformed teaching as an educator. Dr. Phil, why don't you introduce yourself?
How you doing? First of all, again, I want to thank you for bringing me back. Like you said, the last time I was on your show, it was great dialogue. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and I too recommend that it's a segment that everyone listens to. I am Dr. Phil. I did everything in the field of education. So I was a teacher, I was a school psychologist, assistant principal, superintendent of some of the largest districts in the United States, and a superintendent of some of the most rural districts in the United States. And then I was a national ambassador for the United States Department of Education. And I went on to do some work with Apple and did a long work with Oracle. And I decided to start my own technology company. And so that was Playbook, which is a innovative reading technology that uses artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and speech recognition to help children learn how to read. And in the process of that, I've also started two nonprofit coding academies, one in Mississippi Coding Academy, where we are teaching 17 and older, 25 to 30, how to code and to be able to, and then also place them in the workplace. And We Code, we worked with younger students who are 7 to about 17, and so we're building them for the future of tech. Also, to get more minorities in the tech field and more representation in the tech field, so that that there's just a better holistic, equitable product that's developed. And then I also started a charter school, co-founded a charter school in Kansas City as well, and so kind of had those experiences. And then I'm also an author. I have 3 books. Then I have a children's series that's coming out, a book and an animation, and it's called the 4R Kids, and so that's also something that's real fun. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's a lot about you. That's wonderful. And maybe I'll have you come back at some point to do the children, because I had an author come on to do a 4-part series about children and their health and their well-being and helping them to evolve spiritually. So that has, that's going to be coming out soon. So that would be a nice topic for us to talk about, because I think there is such a need for children to have books that talk about the higher aspects or technical aspects that allow them to understand themselves better. But in this segment, we're talking about the educator's evolution and tech transformed teaching. And how did this come about? You talked about a little bit earlier about your background being always in the educational field, and that has been something important to you. But it sounds like it began at an early age, that you really got enthralled by education. And some of that you can hear in part one that Dr. Phil talked about. But is there anything additional you'd like to speak on?
Yeah, I would say again, as a younger child, I was fortunate enough to be able to tinker with technology, to be able to have computers when it was only allowed for wealthy or whoever to have access to technology of the level that I did, of Commodore 64s, Apple computers, and those kind of things. not that I had direction to know how to use it, but it allowed me to explore and tinker with it. And then where my brothers and sisters had to go to a summer school, and I was young. I didn't have to go to summer school, but because we couldn't be left, I couldn't be left home alone. I had to go to the high school summer school, and I was able to be into a technology class. And again, I don't want to date my age, but is we had the blue screens. We were exposed to DOS and Microsoft DOS and those kind of things, and learn how to code and just. And I didn't, and like I said, I didn't know what to do with that information. I had it. I had that background, but again, as I talked to the other segments, it's always a divine appointment. It's always a purpose, and you have to walk in faith and absorb that information because it's full circle. Life is just not that big that things don't come back in full circle. So that was my experience with technology early on, and I had a love for technology. I actually wanted to be a robotics engineer,
Ah,
but I didn't. I've never seen anyone that looked like me. I've never, even if anyone that didn't look like me, I never seen a robotics engineer. I wouldn't even know what that person looks like. I just had those dreams, but they were quickly deflated because my environment, that's not what we were, what we saw, what we did. And so I went to the college on a football scholarship. But I end up obtaining 5 or 6 graduate degrees and a doctorate, and I'm working on another graduate degree right now. But my point is, I was immersed in the education field. And then later on, I said, I wanted to figure out how to better improve our craft, our field. 75% of children in the United States read below grade level.
mm,
75%. And so that leads to a student dropping out. 73% of crime created in the United States is created by high school dropouts. 82% of prison inmates have a reading impairment that's never been corrected. So they simply couldn't be taught reading. And then you have the other aspect of it is that we have a national teacher shortage. I worked in schools and consulted in schools where they only have one certified teacher throughout the entire district.
wow.
And so I had to figure out, despite the adult, what can I do to better help students, especially with the foundations of reading. And that's where I started thinking about the technology, and then how do I develop technology that's appropriate for students. A lot of times people develop ed tech tools and they have no background in education. They just had a thought, and their only experience was when they went to school. A lot of times those technology tools, when they're rolled out in the classroom, they just don't work. It just wasn't designed for that environment.
Mm,
And those are just some of the conflicts that I had to think about. And then being a national ambassador for the United States Department of Education, I was able to see holistically, go to schools around the country and really see what's going on and what's not going on, and what can be better done to improve that aspect of it, especially since there's so many negative consequences of a child not being able to read. If anything, everyone thinks it's an inner city problem. But when I said that statistics, I said 75% of children in the entire United States read below grade level at 4th grade. And so that should be an indicator that we have a level of national security, that
issues,
if,
yes.
if if it's that significant amount of students in 4th grade, then we can predict their future trajectory if there's not a good intervention. And so that's why I was really set on developing this reading technology.
Before
That's
you go
very.
there to talking about the reading technology, I just want to make a comment because what you're saying is so fundamental because for the soul, reading is fundamental to the soul because the reading aspect allows you to develop this discipline of thinking. That's how you need to think about things, how you need to put words together, phonics, for example, which they took out of schools. It allows you to be able to process information that the soul is needing so that it allows the soul to continue to evolve and grow. It allows an open door too to reading. So many different worlds of reading that you can do that allows you to see what you can be, like you were talking about earlier, and also a greater awareness that reading requires some discipline. It requires some motivation to want to read, and it also allows the person to be able to say, I'm confined to this kind of perspective of the world because I can't read that sign, or I can't read this, or I can't read that. No, we need to inculcate within our children that they can have the preciousness of being able to read. And what I'm hearing you have done is find a more creative and innovative way, which is a part of the spirit. The soul wants creativity, wants innovation, to be able to say, okay, if that door is not open, there've got to be other doors to help us to be able to get there. So let's open some other doors. And that's what God comes in. God says, well, man is trying to close this door. We have other things we can give to you. And therefore, your education that you went through and the different degrees, all were preparing you and continue to prepare you to do what you're doing currently, to help this next generation that needs so much at this point in terms of education that has failed them. And maybe that's not right to say, but education has failed them.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, we spend so much time trying to educate children for our past instead of their future. We know that they're going to live in a digital ecosystem. We know that they're plugged in outside of school more than they are have ever been. And then when we have them come to school, we have them just sit and get. And we know that the way that they learn is totally different from the way that we learn, just because they're digital natives. They, you can go to a restaurant and you can see a 2-year-old flicking through an iPad, right? And so they understand how to grasp information, and their brain is wired a different way than how we're teaching for them to be successful. Again, because we're teaching them for preparing them for our past instead of their future. And the part of reading that's really important is people have to understand that reading is actually not innate. It's not, you're not born to learn how to read. It's actually a newer skill in our evolution. It is not something that happened in the past. Even when you look at it from a biblical standpoint, a lot of the writers of the Bible they were illiterate. They had scribes and scrolls that wrote them for them.
Matthew was illiterate.
Right. Well, Matthew, yeah, right. But if you look at it from the aspect, that's why I said some. But if you look at it from the aspect of learning to read, if you make the assumption that it's innate, you think it happens, right? You think a child is born, then they start to coo and babble and they start to crawl and walk, and then they read, and that's not the progress of it. It has to be direct taught, and what you said, the science of reading has to be direct taught. So phonics and reading fluency and all those phonemic awareness has to happen, and it has to be a direct thing. The problem is when you have teachers who are uncertified, who don't have that training, and they're teaching a kid to read through whole language learning, meaning memorizing words, then eventually words they're not going to be exposed to those words. And so the problem with reading right now is children spend so much time trying to decode and break down words, they don't have enough energy to understand what they read. The issue is everything that is out there now only focuses on reading comprehension. And I can easily show you all the reading assessments right now. What they do is you got to quietly read a paragraph and answer multiple choice questions. That's reading comprehension. That has nothing to do with basic reading, the issue that children are having. Then we make an intervention based off reading comprehension. My tool is the first tool that actually uses speech recognition and artificial intelligence, meaning that as the child is reading, it can hear the child read. And not only that we have special technology, we have our own speech engine that can hear the child read all the way down to the phonemic level, to the unit of speech.
Oh,
so
wow.
if the child read the word bat, we hear bats or the lack thereof. And then, of course, we can take that information and devise interventions based off the science of reading, based off the skills the student is lacking, whether it's blending, segmenting, diphthong diagraphs, whether it's, phonics or vowels or CV or whatever it is, we can identify those issues and start to recommend interventions. And then also to the student, despite the adults training, we also can give the students activities, videos to relearn, and games that are actually academic games that build the foundation skills, build those holes in their students' learning. Because right now they look like a Swiss cheese. They have holes in their foundation. And we have to have someone that's trained enough to identify those holes and plug them in, make an intervention that's tailored specific towards that student's holes, and not for a general intervention is what everybody is doing now. And so that's the difference of our tool. Great
So go
tool.
back a little bit, because making sure that the seekers and listeners are hearing this, you've developed an innovative approach that is based in technology, that is future focused on the child, and which is the soul wishes to be future focused as well, that allows them to get the foundational stones, and then from that foundational stone, they can accelerate in terms of their development and in their understanding. So some of those foundational stones for this begin at the age of 7, then or 5, or does it go up to the age of 18? Tell me more.
So it's preschool. You can start at age 5 and 4 because it teaches the foundational skills all the way down
Okay.
to just identifying letter sounds, and blending and segmenting all those things.
So that's the
And then
phonics
our
then. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh yeah. That, I mean, it listens all the way to the phonemic level, so it can
Mm-hmm.
identify it, tell the child where they're wrong in those areas, and then actually remediate. Not tell the child like you're wrong, But again, it starts to build a playlist of activities for that student to do. In the background, it gives a recommendation to the teacher as far as how they need to intervene based off their core curriculum. And then if you look at it from the books that it recommends outside of the activities and games, the books that it recommends books based off your interest and based off your readability level and based off your errors. If you're struggling with the AT sound, the at sound, and it shows across the platform, then the books that I recommend will have a preponderance of cat, rat, sat, mat, hat, like those kind of words, so that you can practice. And once you are able to show proficiency, 90% or more in oral fluent reading or maybe on the activities and all those kind of things, then those books are no longer recommended. It's books only on your deficits, and obviously in a couple words, your what books that you favor, your interests, and all those kind of things. And the activities that are recommended to the student are only activities based off the student's weakness, based off their holes in their foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anyone can assign activities to the student and strengthen also the students. You want to work on their strengths too. But
Mm-hmm.
what Playbook does is a good job is identifying those. I liken it to a GPS. And so what I mean by that is that if you're a student is driving down their learning journey and they're supposed to make a right and they make a left, we don't catch them until they're miles down the wrong road. And hey, you got to turn around, right? And then we got to coach them and build their skill set back to the starting point. And then we have to do another catch up growth to the students that are already 2 or 3 miles down the correct road. That's why students are behind grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
Issue is, it's probably easier to do if it's one student. In the classroom, you have many students that went off on different paths. And instead of like your GPS automatically reroutes you, if you don't have something real time that can reroute you, and it may not take you to the traditional path, but it may take you to the path that you need to build your foundational skills, the holes in your learning, and then put you on, and you catch up with everybody faster. You don't lose ground. And that's what Playbook is developed to do and for.
Wow, it is as if it's coaching you to move back into the path, and then allows you to accelerate to get to what the level that you need to be at, and maybe even past that, because you can continue and continue in order to achieve your best self. And it likens me, as you're talking about that, to what happens with the soul. The soul can get off path too, and it can have experiences that ends up being a deficit to the soul's evolution and growth. And that's what I talk about in last year about barriers and roadblocks to soul progress. And those barriers can occur on a physical level, an emotional level, and on a mental level, as well as on a spiritual level, that these barriers can happen to us. And for children, in their physicality at this point, one of those barriers, for example, is anger. We're not realizing that anger, not helping the child master that anger, for example, it has an impact upon their emotional body or their emotional self. Therefore, they can't keep focus, they can't learn. All they know is they're angry. And so they're not realizing that it does have an impact on their ability, as you're talking about reading, but it has an impact upon so many other areas of their worlds, because what they end up getting is stubborn sometimes. And in that process of being stubborn, it's really carries a barrier for the soul, because the soul doesn't know stubbornness. It doesn't want to have stubbornness. It wants you to be able to say, learn, grow, figure out how you need to detour. And I give the analogies. There's three analogies I give in some of my episodes is that sometimes we need to float in water, just float and understand the situation that's around them. We need to teach children how to be able to do that. Sometimes we actually need to be able to be a skateboard, be on the skateboard, travel through the experience that you're going through, but don't get off the skateboard. Stay on it, keep moving, and move through the experience and growth that way. And another level is we need to be on a trampoline. And we need the trampoline, we need to bounce and those and see a higher level of what going back to in part one, vision and direction, a higher level of what we need to do and the soul needs to do in order to make the self-corrections and move in the right direction and move forward. All that you're talking about with this GPS, that you're trying to correct children in, it's helpful to the soul and the soul's continued progress and growth.
Oh yeah, I mean, can you imagine? And nowadays, because of course, we're not used to maps and pulling over and asking for direction, but I use GPS in Kansas City where I'm from. I mean, you imagine being lost without it, and immediately in our day and age with time constraints, and we have already planned out based on our GPS that we're going to get there in 30 minutes. And oh man, I made the wrong turn, and how that you have to figure that out and all those kind of things. And without having that GPS to reassure you that, well, you know what, here's an alternative route to get there, and you're still going to get there at the same time. That reassurance, along as an adult, is satisfying. Imagine that for a struggling learner that never had that redirection, the correct redirection. So if you keep making first of all, if you keep making interventions based off reading comprehension, the student is never going to progress. The student is going to get frustrated because no matter what you throw at them, they're still continue to struggle. That's all they know. I'm still lost.
Right.
Still lost. An adult will say, I give up. I'm going home. That's what an adult will say. I'm going home. I can't find this place. It's not here. It's here on the map. I can't find it. And so, with GPS rerouting, when your GPS reroutes you, you still have doubts. But you look on your GPS and you say, wait a minute, I just passed this street. Oh, wait, I'm going the right way. I passed this street. I passed this. And so the success that you start to build on that reroute gives you that self-efficacy, your perceived ability. It strengthens that. And so it allows you to get back on track. And even, see, the problem is that we expect people to go the traditional route, even though we know that there's more than one way. And we know that what we do is try to standardize the unstandardizable. Humans are not standardized.
The soul is not standardized either. There's no two snowflakes alike.
Not at all. Not at all. Even there's strong aspects of identical twins that they do things, but still, you can find a mold that's different or a birthmark that's different. Or my whole point is we try to standardize the unstandardizable in education, and we give a one-size-fits-all curriculum. And we know better. We know that and therefore, before in the past, the education system used to be devised for 65% of students. The rest of the students, we call them the outcast or the this or that, however you want to label, those students. And we didn't worry about it. It was 20-something percent, right? But when you start to look at now, it has flipped. 65% of our students are not doing well in our education system. It's so bad that even our gifted kids are one of our new at-risk populations. They're dropping out like flies because they're bored. Again, they have access to all this information. They have access to all these things. And then, we only give them a one-size-fit-all. And for instance, who said that a child needs to learn how to read in, let's say, 45 minutes? Let's say a reading class period is 45 minutes. Who said that? If 45 minutes a day, this student should be able to read. What if I only need 10 minutes and I get it? I have to sit here and be bored with the rest of it. What if 45? What if I need 50 minutes? So at 45, when I'm about to have my aha moment, shut the books, let's move on. We'll move on to math. And so I'm the one that's going to be left behind. I'm lost. Just like the kid that's gifted who's going to be bored, is going to start having behaviors or disenfranchised or just doesn't want to be here. And so education system usually is geared towards that middle ground, or because someone said this, that, and the other, and we don't personalize learning. But yet we're in a technology age where we're able to really personalize learning. We're really able to personalize. We're able to cater it towards that individual student. The research says, if you look at education technology, you look at transforming teachers. The other thing is that you have to make decisions based off data. And for some reason, education is a field that the research says that we sit on more data than a Fortune 500 company. But yet we don't use it to benefit our end user. The only thing we do is record history. What I mean by that is you failed, or you passed, or you're absent or present, or you're in this grade, or that, like, that's all the data tells you. You're male or female, or you're this age or that age. But if I go to Walmart, they know everything. They know my user behavior more than I know it. They know what to put in front of me. They know what ad to throw on my phone real quick before I walk in. They know, how to send me. They're collecting data. They're asking me, did I like it? Did I not like my experience? They're constantly moving around their store and making it so that to gear towards everyone else. Yeah, that's
So what do you think has happened that the educational system has turned out to be that way? And I see the viability of so much of the playbook that you're talking about that is really keeping in sync with the age and the time of the 21st century and that we exist in. But what do you think has happened to the education system that they don't use that data and to use it to help the end user?
Yeah, it's just a big dinosaur that's slow to move. It just hasn't evolved. It hasn't changed with time, and the expectation hasn't been for it to change. If there right now there are no existing businesses that are still in existence that didn't change with time, and we could talk about some of our largest companies, Kodak, Sears. Kodak had the first digital camera. People don't know that they had the first digital camera, and what they chose to do is they chose to be married towards their film. That was their moneymaker, and they felt that if they put out the digital camera, it would affect their film business. And guess what? Other people developed the digital camera and evolved. Sears stayed married to its catalog as opposed to digitizing. I mean, Sears is huge. We can keep going on different companies and corporations. And the same thing as school is, but the problem is there are no organizations that will be able to function at a failure rate. If 75% of children in the fourth grade read below grade level, and that means that you only have a 25% success rate, as an organization, you're failing.
Right.
And
as a society, we're failing.
But there's no immediacy. There's no urgency to say that. There's no panic to say we need to do something differently. We just keep doing the same thing, and we have schools that are considered dropout factories where they only graduate 15, 20, 30%, 40% of their kids. That's not okay. That's not okay.
It isn't. It feels as if in some ways, if parents and educators don't actively get involved to be able to say we need to find something different, and that's like Montessori. You would found then that she wanted to do something different to help to the absorbent mind. She wrote a book on to help children, to understand the connection between the soul and also education, and how the soul will actually gravitate to things that it actually will want more of and be curious about, what you did in your childhood, and gravitate towards that. And then if we keep them moving in the direction that they're naturally curious about, they'll have an igniting of the fire within them to say, I want more of this. And then if we can give them more of that, then it helps then not only that child who becomes an adult, but also helps society too, because we're now functioning in a higher way.
I totally agree. I totally agree with everything you said.
So what we're going to have to do is we're going to take a step back, just make a comment of something that you want to say to leave the listener with very briefly. And then we're going to end the segment just because our time has gone on so quickly. And I know Dr. Phil has to get to his next assignment.
One of the things I say is that in education, all this talk, I don't want to say doom and gloom and everybody's fearful. Everybody feels like technology is going to replace the teacher and those kind of things. And even as a superintendent, I told my teachers, technology will not replace the adults, but those who use it will replace those who don't. Like, it's a tool, just like no one would do a big calculation without a calculator. Like, it's okay. We have to embrace technology. Yeah, our students understand it a little bit more than us, but they don't understand it in the more appropriate way, how to apply, how to critically think, and how to solve problems and those kind of things. Like, they ingest technology, they can work through the beginnings of a tool, but there's other things that we can contribute and teach them to have them to be more productive citizens. They understand that they will live in a digital ecosystem. They said in 2040, 85% of jobs that will exist have not even been invented yet. But we do know that it's going to have two things: technology and reading proficiency, right? Mm-hmm. Why proficiency? Because you're going to have that little black box in your hand is going to give you any information in the world. But now you have to read through it and critically apply it. Like, that's going to be your work. And then obviously the understanding technology. If you understand that, then the other thing is automation. We already know that blue collar automation is replacing jobs, but there's white collar automation. There's right now, surgeons use robotics to do surgeries. They're sitting behind a booth. Lawyers, you almost don't need a beginning lawyer anymore, because you have artificial intelligence that can sum up any brief and find anything and give it to you as an attorney. And then you also got to worry about global automation. Therefore, your job is no longer, you're going to be competing against your neighbor or your local or somebody in the next state. You're going to be competing against jobs of people in the world. We don't prepare our children for this. If we don't transform and use technology to transform our teaching, then we're preparing our kids for failure. So I thank you for allowing me to be on your show. This was great. It's a pleasure again to be able to come on your show and kind of talk about my passion.
It's been delightful to hear about your passion and how you're applying it and how you're being innovative, especially in this part 2, in which we've been talking about the educator's evolution, tech transformed teaching. And how can they reach you if they want to reach out to you, Dr. Phil?
And so I'm Dr. Phil on LinkedIn. And my website is www.playbookeducation.com. Playbook is spelled Plabook. And I know you ask, why is it misspelled and you're teaching reading? Well, it's a multisyllabic word, so the vowel can scream its name. So it's just showing you the complexities of our English language. But it's www.playbookeducation.com. Or you can email me at P as in Paul, Hickman, HICKMAN @playbook.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on this part 2. I really appreciate it. And I say to seekers, good information to listen to and continue to think about and reach out to Dr. Phil if you have any questions. Bye for now. Take care. Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.